Namaste. So last time we finished up the second chapter, and now we're going to begin the third. And this is where the story actually begins. Up till now has just been preparing the scene, making the background, giving a context. Context is very important. Context determines meaning. What determines the meaning of a given word, which may have several different definitions? It's the context, the sentence, the paragraph, the subject matter. That's what really determines the meaning. So the last couple of chapters have just been kind of the introduction or the way in to the subject of this Devi Mahātmya. Mahātmya means a work of praise. So any work of praise of the goddess is a Mahātmya. So let me continue at the beginning of the third chapter. There's some things I want to explain before we go into the story itself. Having listened to Dattātreya's words, Paraśurāma was delighted and continued his questions in all humility. Now, who is Dattātreya exactly? You know, in a Sanskrit work like this, all the names have deep meaning. Datta means the servant, and Atreya means a priest who is closely related to the officiating members of a sacrificial assembly. See, back in the old days of the Vedas contain elaborate instructions for big sacrifices to be performed by kings, and to which all the citizens were invited. From the king and his court all the way down to the lowest commoner, and even the animals were invited to attend this ceremony and partake of the prasadam, or the remnants of the offerings made to the gods. So this was considered so important that there was a separate committee called the Sadasya. The Sadasya is the officiating, they're sometimes called witnesses, but that's not exactly right either. Because really what they do is determine the standards of the sacrifice and make sure that all the procedures are followed correctly in all particulars. So they're more or less a group of very qualified brahmanas in charge of the standards of the sacrifice. And the actual priests are called ritvik. A ritvik means a priest who performs a sacrifice on behalf of somebody else. So in this case, in the Vedic tradition, the sacrifice was performed on behalf of the king and the citizens by the Ritvik priests led by the Sadasya, the Committee of Standards. So their servant is Dattātreya. Dattātreya is also sometimes considered an avatar because he is self-realized. So he is non-different from Brahman. Anyway, Paraśurāma continues, O Bhagavān. Bhagavān means most fortunate one. It's applied to the realized souls, the sages. It is precisely as my Lord Guru has just said. Truly, a man will ever head for destruction in his ignorance. His salvation lies in investigation, vichāra, alone. The remote and proximate causes have also been mentioned by thee, and they have been traced to this Mahātmya. So in other words, the guidance of the self-realized soul is to absorb oneself in worship And in the beginning, this has to be done under rules and regulations, discipline from outside. But once one acquires a taste for association with the Lord in any form, then it becomes spontaneous. One continues the discipline without any need for any authority. I'll give you an example. I mentioned last time that in the beginning, my guru was a disciplinarian and gave very strict instructions on everything. What you do when you first get up in the morning, how to take bath, how to pass stool, how to clean the toilet afterwards, how to dress, how to eat, and how to go to the temple and perform the guru pranati, the worship of the guru, and then chant the mantra, the holy name, and so on and so on. So at first, this seemed like an incredible burden. It was so difficult. It took several months really to learn the whole routine. You know, my students on the private channel are hesitating to learn 3 shlokas. Well, we had to learn like 18 just to get through the morning program. So you guys got it easy. I'm not demanding much. You're still balking. I don't know what's going on. So kids today, you know. So when this routine became a habit, then it became easy. It was like clockwork, and literally. The alarm rings at 4 o'clock, you get up, take bath, and so on and so on. And then, over more time, after 5 years or 7 years, it becomes a taste. And you don't want to give it up, even if you have to go traveling or something like this. In those days, we used to travel second class on the trains in India. And that means no AC. And just, you know, dumped in a big car with all kinds of people and even animals. It was really wild. And we survived it by doing our morning program actually in the train. And people were astonished. They were like, wow, you know, you guys are fixed up. Well, it wasn't so much we were fixed up, but we had a taste. And we didn't want to ignore or neglect that taste because we knew it was the cause of all good fortune. So then fast forward to 2001, when I retired from business. What was the first thing I did? I gave all my studio equipment to my son, and I packed up and went to Hawaii, to the island of Kauai. Kauai is beautiful. It's called the Garden Island, for good reason. So I camped in the jungle there, near a very nice beach. And for 6 months, I did nothing but chant my mantra. I would get up early before the sun, chant 16 rounds, you know, before sunrise, or at least before breakfast. And then after breakfast, another 16. After lunch, another 16. And then in the evening, another 16. 64 rounds a day, minimum. So those of you who have some experience, you can imagine what that's like. I was in bliss. So this is what is meant by taste. You want to do it. So now he's saying that both the remote and the proximate causes of this great good fortune to be embarked on the path of vichāra are due to Mahātmya, the glorification of the goddess. So the mantra that we were chanting also glorifies the goddess in a different form. And we are glorifying the goddess in the form of Ambal. So he says, I am in great doubt on this point. How does that happen? And what is, again, its proximate cause? Can it be that it is natural, like courage to a hero, then why is it not shared by all? Why have I not got it as yet? Again, there are others who are more troubled and suffer even more than I. Why have they not got this means? Kindly tell me. In other words, why don't people in general practice vichāra? I mean, it's no big secret. It's there in all the books. And especially in the teachings of Ramana Maharshi, it's very prominent. So why is it that others don't practice it? How is it, especially people who are suffering a lot, don't look into it? They don't investigate the cause of suffering. And so Datta, the ocean of mercy, answered, "Listen, Rama, I shall now tell you the fundamental cause of salvation. Association with the wise is the root cause for obliterating all misery. Association with the sages alone is said to lead to the highest good. Your contact with Samvarta has led you to this stage of enlightenment, which is the forerunner of emancipation." So again, it's confirmed that there are different stages of enlightenment, different stages of sadhana, different views of the truth. In other words, he says here that, he says earlier that the sages, he says in the next line, on being approached, the sages teach the greatest good. Now, what is the greatest good? It's different for different people at different times. And it depends mainly on the level. Remember the four darshanams. Dvaita-vāda, Vishishta-dvaita-vāda, Vivarta-vāda, and Ajata-vāda. So it depends on which view of God they have at the moment. If, like us students in the beginning, we're brought up in the dualistic view, Dvaita-vāda, then external discipline is the greatest good. But for those who have developed taste, then spontaneous service in Vishishta-dvaita is the greatest good. See? And for those whose bhakti has matured to the highest state of prema, then atma vichāra, in the stage of inquiry, vivarta-vāda, this is the highest good. And finally, when one is complete with the vichāra, the stage of ajata is the highest good. So the highest good changes according to one's stage of development. And he goes on. On being approached, the sages teach the highest good. Has anyone ever got anything great without contact with the wise? In any case, it is the company which determines the future of the individual. So then, it's very easy to understand. Why don't more people get this wonderful stage of vichāra? Well, for one thing, they're not qualified. They don't have the adhikar. And for another thing, they don't associate, with the wise. They associate with people like themselves who are in ignorance. And they don't give up this association. They're attached. So even though they're suffering, they don't realize the cause of their suffering is bad association. So they go on with their family, their job, their political association, their nationalism, their money addiction, and so many things that are actually killing them, exploiting them, and taking away all their happiness and their prospects for an auspicious future. But because they're attached, due to obligation, they made a promise. They walked down the aisle. I'm going to love you for the rest of my life. Even if you're an idiot and you bring me all kinds of bad luck. So people go on with these relationships on a wrong platform, which are causing them all kinds of bad results. And they don't see what the real cause is. Why? They don't associate with the wise. So that's why we make these videos. And that's why the sages wrote the Vedas. Actually, it's in some ways is a blasphemy to write anything down on this topic. It really should be passed verbally from master to disciple. But in Kali Yuga, there aren't enough realized masters. So the mercy of the realized sages was to write down these talks. And these are the Upanishads. Upanishad means come here, come close, and sit down and listen. Sit down and shut up. And listen to the descriptions of the absolute truth given by the realized souls. So this is the medicine, you see? And because nobody is taking it, maybe they read the books or they see the videos, but they don't actually seek out the realized souls. To put it in an analogy, it's like going to a sports game event, and just sitting in the stands and watching, just being a spectator, instead of coming down, doing the training, getting accepted in the team, and becoming an actual player. So what we're saying is, give up your seat in the stands. Don't be a spectator. Don't just be an audience. Come, get the training. Do the discipline. Reform your character. Develop good habits that will be the foundation for the higher practices later on. So, I described the meaning of Dattātreya. Now, in the next segment, we're going to introduce the main characters of the story. And the main characters are Hemacūda and Hemaleka. Hemacūda is the son of a great king named Muktacūda. Muktacūda means liberated head. That his mind was liberated. Maybe he was still acting as a king in the world, but his head was out of here, man. His head was liberated. Muktacūda, liberated head. And then Hemacūda means golden head, or specifically a golden shikha. When a student approaches a spiritual master for initiation, he shaves his whole head and face, of course, except for a tuft of hair in the back, which is called a shikha. So, literally, Hemacūda means golden shikha. He was still very youthful. He still had his tuft of hair from his initiation. And it was golden. He was a blonde. Okay? And then Hemaleka, the heroine of the story, means one who has a golden crescent moon on her forehead. Now, who matches this description? Well, there's only two people I can think of, Shiva and Shakti. They're both described like this. So, actually, Hemaleka is the goddess. Okay? And what the author here is doing is putting the goddess's words and the goddess's character into the image of a beautiful young girl who is brought up in the forest by sages and has a completely pure character. So of course, this is just a story. It's not meant to be history. It's not called a Purana, which means history. It is simply a story that has these elements externally of being very sweet and relishable. A love story, okay? Everyone likes a good love story. So in this love story, which is very interesting to me, the woman is the teacher. She reveals the truth to her husband. And of course, this is very rare in this world. You know, I looked at the stats on this channel the other day. There are no women, 0 women watching this channel in the last 4 weeks. You know, I don't get it. Here we are talking about the goddess and everything. They're not interested. And I don't know why, because they don't talk to me. But I can guess that in the light of this, what we went over today, it's because of bad association. And because they have lack of wisdom and knowledge, they don't know how to overcome it. So this story is actually the narration of a pure, beautiful young woman, enlightened, who gets in a relationship with a lusty young man and reforms him and brings him to enlightenment. This is a story we really need to hear. It's one that I wish would happen in real life a lot more often. Aum Tat Sat. Aum Harihi Aum.